So we're asking ourselves the question, who am I? And last week we considered that you're not what you do, you're not what you have, and you're not what people say about you. We're going to look at a story from the book of 1 Samuel. And Samuel was sent by God to choose the next king. In 1 Samuel 16 we read, "The Lord said to Samuel, I'm sending you to Jesse of Bethlehem. I have chosen one of his sons to be king." And at Jesse's house, he got Jesse to bring out all of his sons. And they were all awesome. Imagine, if you will, the best ever episode of Britain's Got Talent that you've ever seen, where each act was amazing and really impressive, and each was better than last. And if you read the account in 1 Samuel, each son was rejected by God, even though each seemed, at least on the surface, an obvious choice. In verse 11, Samuel asked Jesse, "Are these all of your sons?" You see, Sam was confused, and he's sort of saying, "Well, is that it?" And then Jesus remembers, well, they're still the youngest, but he's tending the sheep. I find it fascinating here. He doesn't even use David's name. It's almost like just a casual, oh, well, yeah, there is one more. He's the youngest one. It's not really that important. Because you see, in David's day, your birth order determined your lot in life. The eldest son would start working with his father as soon as the younger brother was old enough to tend the sheep. And it would continue as each child came along until eventually the younger son would become a shepherd, not considered important enough to do anything other than just be looking after the sheep. So David's lot in life had already been determined, and David was really a nobody. He was the youngest, and therefore he wasn't important. So unimportant his dad doesn't even use his name. Samuel says, "Send for him. Will not sit until I've met him." And the story continues in verse 12 that he had a healthy complexion, he had attractive eyes and handsome appearance. And then the Lord said, yeah, he's the one. See, God chooses David to be king because God knows what's on the inside. David's brothers might have been impressive, but God was looking for something different. God chooses certain people for certain tasks because God values their willingness to give it a go, not how good they are at it. God isn't interested in how much you can accomplish or in how talented you are. What God is most interested in is whatever you're willing to give him and to give it a go and to serve him. The text tells us that God didn't see as we do, but God looks right through all of the outward appearance and he sees what's in the heart. He sees what's on the inside. That's how God sees people. The outward appearance is of little importance. You see, it doesn't matter to God how strong you are or how handsome you are or how pretty you are. It doesn't matter to God how clever you are or how good you are at sport. But it's the heart on the inside that matters. And the Bible actually describes David as, and we can read it in Acts 13, he describes David as the man after God's own heart. There are many times in life when we know we're not good enough. At school, when the football teams were chosen, I was one of those kids that would always get picked last. So I never played football competitively because I was never good enough to be on the team. But I don't believe that God is that bothered, because God has called me to do other things. And the crowd may never clap and cheer like when someone scores the winning goal. And I may not have trophies on my mantelpiece. But I'm in good company, because I think that some of you are a bit like me. Let me tell you of someone else just like us. Mary had grown up knowing that she was different from the other kids, and she hated it. She was born with a cleft palate, and she had to bear the jokes and the stares of the cruel children who teased her non-stop. With all the teasing, Mary grew up hating the fact that she was different. She was convinced that no one outside her family could ever love her, until she entered Mrs. Leonard's class. Mrs. Leonard had a warm smile, a round face and shiny brown hair. While everyone in her class liked her, Mary came to love Mrs. Leonard. In the 1950s, it was common for teachers to give their children an annual hearing test. However, in Mary's case, in addition to a cleft palate, she was barely able to hear out of one ear. Determined not to let the other kids have another excuse to make fun of her, she would cheat on the hearing test each year. The whisper test was given by getting the child to walk to the classroom door, turn sideways, close one ear with their finger, and then repeat something which the teacher whispered. Mary turned her bad ear towards her teacher and pretended to cover her good ear. She knew the teachers would often say things like, "The sky is blue," or "What colour are your shoes?" But not on that day. Surely God put 7 words in Mr. Leonard's mouth that changed Mary's life forever. When the whisper test came, Mary heard the words, "I wish you were my little girl." We need to know that God isn't interested in how much you can accomplish or in how talented you are. So this week, as we continue to consider the question, who are you? Let's let the story of David remind us that you're not what you do. You're not what you have, and you're not what people say about you. Because, well, you see, God looks on the inside. It's what's going on inside that really matters. And we're all, just like David, chosen by God.